All right. There we go, everybody. We should be recording. Welcome to the AppSheetTraining.com webinar. Today's date is August 27th of 2020. We are still surviving coronavirus. For those of you who haven't left your house in a while, it is still out there. We are CrewTech. That is our firm. My name is Clark James. I'm going to be hosting the webinar. We also have Stefan Quartermont, the actual president of Crew Technologies, with us.
Happy to be here.
Well, we're definitely happy to have you. Just so everybody's aware, we are going to be recording and posting this on YouTube. If you'd like to reference it, it should be up in about a week is what we've seen, is usually the time frame before this gets uploaded. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and dive on in. And so first I want to talk about AppSheet, and why anybody should use AppSheet. Why should anybody consider a no-code app development? AppSheet provides a no-code development platform for application software, which allows users to create mobile, tablet, and web applications using data sources like Google Drive, Dropbox, Office 365, and other cloud-based spreadsheet and database platforms. The platform can be utilized for a broad set of business use cases, including project management, customer relationship management, field inspections, and personalized reporting. Some of the big features that we find our clients are interested in include, but are not limited to, data capture, data collaboration, data display, and even declarative programming models. It's a big, big phrase, but I'll explain it here. Uh, Basically, learning programming languages and learning how to do custom development for anybody can be super challenging. It can be incredibly challenging. So why would you trust a no-code platform? What's the benefits? Well, no-code development makes it much easier to solve your problems when you're wanting to build an app for your business. AppSheet is agile, it's efficient, it's approachable. Okay, as we see here, giving you the means to build your apps quickly, making changes to them quickly to meet your business needs. AppSheet is also incredibly efficient because you don't have to create every piece of user interface, custom building all of the boring details that are necessary for full-fledged coded applications. Like it's so much easier, guys. I can't even get there. Stefan, you're gonna have to.
I'll say something
All
some
right.
other time. Yeah, keep it going. You're killing it,
um,
Clark.
So this allows you to focus more on the things that are relevant to your business. You don't have to worry about all this boring stuff. You can worry about what matters. It's going to be your actual data. That's what actually drives your company's business models. The approachability to AppSheet is easy as well because it does not require you to learn too many foreign concepts, such as spreadsheet data, as this translates really well in AppSheet. If you're already really good with Excel, it's so easy to translate that into an app. There are a few things about relational databases and understanding how one thing in an app affects another, the size of your data, performance of your app, because things like that can take a little bit of time to get used to. But from a big picture perspective, it's a really approachable way to build your app for your business. Now, I know I've given this spiel the last couple weeks, but I want to still draw attention to this diagram here. Basically, you have three parts in a project. You have your business stakeholder. This is going to be your money. This is going to be the person who's funding the project, who's saying this is what I want done, right? This is going to be the money. Okay. Then you have your operations lead. This is going to be the boss. There's a direct relationship here where they communicate and they talk about the things that the business stakeholder wants the operations lead to be a part of and to make happen. And then you have the IT and developers. These are going to be your coders. This is going to be your guys that are good with technology, good with computers. And more often than not, these two have very little communication. Especially in a bigger business, these two will never talk. They'll never see each other. It's always from business stakeholder to operations lead, from operations lead to the IT and developers. Now, for a lot of smaller companies or smaller businesses or just smaller projects in general, these three things all end up being the same person, right? And so, and so, that is a lot of things to have on your plate. It's a lot of things that you're in charge of, that you're responsible for. And so what AppSheet does is it makes it all easy. It makes it all connected. Everything is so much easier with AppSheet because how agile, how efficient, and how approachable it actually is. Um, so that's a little bit about AppSheet. Today we're actually going to be talking about a timesheet demo where we have some little snapshots that we took of the app, some pretty cool features that Stefan put together. Um, so like I said before, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the comments. If you feel like you really can't wait, go ahead and ask Stefan. He'll probably be able to answer you immediately. So without further ado, Stefan Quartermont, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Clark. Yeah, so today we're going to be walking through a timesheet demo. This kind of covers your basic business timesheet scenario. So it's not gimmicky. It covers sort of the full range of things you might need to capture time from employees, to build out things for payroll, and have a little bit of administrative reporting and diversified user access to the data. Clark, if you want to switch to the next slide, we will show sort of the data relationship diagram here. This is a screenshot from the spec tab in AppSheet. So if you're in the app editor and you click info and then the spec tab, you're going to see something like this with squares and shapes and lines. And you can see that we have in the blue squares, these are our main data tables. We have 3 of them. We have a table of employees. These are the people that work at the business are going to be tracking their time. We have a table of time cards that are related back to an employee. So an employee will submit many time cards during the day. This is the clock in, clock out process every day. And then at the end of the week, to get sort of an aggregate reporting, a snapshot of how many hours that person worked, calculating their total pay, things like that, we have the timesheet table. And then the employee, we have a data relationship built between type cards, timesheets, and employees so that we can track back all of that information to who did that thing. The little green things are filters on the table. So each green diamond represents a slice of data. This is a filtered subset. So we have a logical expression, something like for unclocked out timesheet, this would be where the time out column is blank. So time in is not blank, time out is blank. That means this person is not clocked out. And we have a view built around that specific filter. And then also we have this week's order. So this is all time cards within this current week. And then we have a view for that. And yeah. Let's go ahead and dive in. And again, like as Clark said, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or just unmute yourself and come right out and say it. I will not be offended at any interruptions. Okay, Clark, I'm going to go ahead and take over the screen share here.
Feel free, my friend.
Thank you. Okie dokie. I'm going to actually start with the spreadsheet. So most apps, when you begin the process, you get some business requirements from somebody in your team. Maybe this is the business lead, maybe this is the business manager that we talked about. And they're going to say, hey, we've been tracking time in a spreadsheet and here's our spreadsheet. And you're going to get some form of data and you're saying, okay, how can I make this relate back to my app? And sometimes you may have to break it apart into multiple tables. We call that data normalization. But I've gone ahead and done that already here and set up some of the key elements for each thing. So if you look at the employees, we have typical information. We have an email address. This is how we know and can relate to who's currently logged into the app, because AppSheet gives you the ability to compare the login email to any email field in your data tables. We have that person's name, their role in the company, if they have an overtime limit. So maybe there's a requirement that you have to be able to track overtime. And we want to track pay. and we want to multiply somebody's hours that they've worked times how much their pay rate is. And so we have some imaginary pay rates here. And then we have a column to determine if this person is an administrator. We'll use this to filter different views and show or hide information. Yes, somebody asked, zoom in. I can do that if I press the right buttons. All right, is that looking better? Or shall I go in a little more? Okay, perfect. So there's our employee data table. And then we'll look at the time card. This is what somebody fills out every day as they clock in and out of jobs. We have an ID column. This is a unique key that AppSheet generates for us every time a new row is added to make sure that it's sort of like the social security number for each row. So AppSheet knows, okay, I'm going to look in this ID column. I know that this column corresponds to all the data to the right of it. And then we have a timestamp so we know when this person created it. We've extracted the date from that timestamp. We're tracking what user created this, what time they clocked in, and we're actually also gathering the location data for where they clocked in. So if this is a field service application, or you really didn't need to know or validate where a user is whenever they perform a function in the app, you can track their location. You can grab that provided they give you permission. You can drop that in your data. We have what time they clock out, where they clocked out, and then we actually break apart the date into components that will help us with charting and reporting later. So the week number, that is, there's 52 weeks in a year. And so this is what number of week it is currently, what day of the week, and what year we're in. And then a calculation of the time, as well as a description of what was performed or any notes that the person has. Obviously, you can tell that our current staff do not care to fill out the descriptions. And then we have our timesheet report, which this is the end of the week the person's going to fill out. So again, we have an ID to make sure all these rows can be distinguished from one another. We have the user, so whoever's creating this, when they created it, and if they edited it, when did they do that edit? So this is a common data fields that you can put in to help understand how your users are interacting with rows of data and have a little bit of accountability there. We have a column that's special for formatting. So I've kind of put a couple asterisks around there. So I know that this is really for formatting or just putting some blank text in in the app. We'll show that later. And then we have each day of the week and how many hours was worked on that day, a sum total of hours, how many hours of overtime was worked, the total amount of pay, and again, we have some of our date components extracted here. And somebody asked for a little bit more zoom in on that data. So there you go. In practicality, this is kind of how the app operates. I'm logged in as an admin person right now. So I get to see a special view called Timesheet Manager. This is the dashboard that we're looking at right now. But the common views are the bottom three views. So we have this week's, which is this week's time cards. I'm actually going to sync my data because I've updated it since then. It shows any time card that I've created this week. We have a filter for that in the app. And then special highlighting on anything that is currently open. So my open time card is highlighted blue, as well as has an action button here if I wanted to clock out. AppSheet also has some cool functions. So if you're on a mobile device, you can swipe to the side to activate certain actions. And we have a clock out form, which looks like this, just the time I clocked in, and a button to clock out, or an edit pencil to put some information in my time card or modify something. This action button takes us to the same view. So just wanted to show you that interaction. So a couple ways for a user to get to the same destination, helping the interface to be convenient and easy to use. I'm going to go ahead and clock out. And it takes me back. And now we see the time I clocked in on that card, the time I clocked out, and then the duration says 3 hours and 20 minutes. Now, if I was going to submit my timesheet for the week, I would press submit timesheet. And as I mentioned, that hours column, we're using it to format this right here. It says daily hours. And these fields are grayed out because AppSheet is automatically calculating them. I built some expressions in the back to automatically sum up all of the time card hours for each day and fill out these columns. It sums up the total hours, checks against my overtime limit. I didn't cross it, so it's 0. And then it multiplies it times my pay rate, and we have a total amount. I could save that. And now the view, instead of saying submit timesheet on the far left, says update timesheet. And it opens back up the form, and it would recalculate. Let's say if I put more hours in this week.
And Stefan, we actually do have a question.
Oh, Douglas, where is the Sideswipe function? Is that automatically built in? It is not automatically built in. So I'll go ahead and, I'll show you one more part of the app, and then I'll jump into that question. The other part of this app is the Timesheet Manager view. This is an interactive dashboard. And for those that don't know, a dashboard inside of AppSheet is a grouping of multiple views together. So there are about 6 or 7 different view types in AppSheet. And then there's a dashboard view type where you can group tables and graphs and decks and card views and calendars all into one screen. This is great for a desktop view. Obviously, the other views were more geared towards mobile because oftentimes you're clocking in and out on your phone, especially if it's a field service application. So this is sort of the administrative reporting view, and it's interactive because if I click on one of these employees, it filters every other view that has related data. So I mentioned that there's a data relationship between employees and their timesheets and employees and their time cards. So if I click on Stefan or I click on Cameron, it filters that information. And if I click on one of them again and deselect it, it goes back to everything. I can see a quick graph of how the average hours my team is working per day. So it looks like on the 6th day of the week, which is Friday, we're doing about 8.5 hours. And average hours worked by employee, it looks like Cameron is doing a lot more work than me on average. That's because he is a highly productive individual. And then again, the filtering by individual person. So that is basically all the views that this app has. We do have a list of employees, but that's sort of trivial. So I'm just going to leave that one there. And at this point in time, I would love for the rest of this to kind of be an interactive Q&A. So if you have questions on how we built any feature, why we built any feature, go ahead and throw them in the chat or open up the mic. I'm going to go ahead and start with Douglas's question. He said, where is the Sideswipe function? Is that automatically built in? So I've got my editor open. I'm going to go to the UX menu. And for reference, he's talking about this little drag and swipe action. And the view I'm in right now is this week's view. So if you look at your emulator on the right at the bottom, there are short links to the view controller and the table controller. I pressed this week's and it opened up my view controller for me. This is a deck view type. And just a tidbit of information, the swipe actions are only available on the deck view. So we can see those down here. We have some general options, how we're sorting this list of items, how we're grouping it. So we're grouping by date. That's why you see the date bolded and then the count of how many records are in it on top of the deck items. We have the primary header, secondary header set. And as we scroll down, we have under display, we have behavior. So this is something called an event action. An event is like, it lists them here. So event number 1 would be when somebody selects the row. That's when they click on it. And the action is set to auto. So by default, it usually opens the detail view of that record. But I could change it. I could say, maybe I want to go straight to the form. So now when I click it, it opens straight to the form edit view. And then we have row swipe left and row swipe right. I don't have anything set for row swipe right, so that's why I drag to the right and it just doesn't really do anything. But I swipe to the left and it shows me my action icon there for the navigate to clock out action. And again, if you're not familiar, inside the behavior tab or behavior menu, there's an actions tab where you can set up custom actions that can change how you interact with your data or navigate you to different parts of your app, or do a few other specialized things. Okay, follow-up question. How are those options populated? Those actions are already built out for that table. Yes, Douglas. So the white actions, if you aren't seeing these kind of white action tiles here, you can press show system actions. And it shows anything that AppSheet already built in automatically when you built this application, which there's a lot of them. So the time card table, which is what this data is related to, has several white actions. So any event action will show, edit, view map, chart data, view ref, delete, view map, and add. But it will also show any applicable action type that you create yourself. Those are the gray action tiles. All right, Margot has a question. As an admin, I'm assuming you can edit individual records. Is there anything you can do to freeze the record so if you're editing, someone else can't edit until you save? That is a good question. So, and it's not a straightforward answer. So AppSheet is built for offline use. So that means the concept of asynchronous or editing, where two users are editing the same thing at different times, but like the central database doesn't really know what, when it gets a record. So it's kind of it's not a real-time thing. Like when two people edit a Google sheet, you see the other person's changes immediately, and it's rare that you would cross edit. So you'd both be editing the same thing and cause a conflict there. Because AppSheet is offline stable, it means that it's assuming that people are not, or they're going to be editing at the same time, or it could be editing. You could get records out of order. Or edits out of order. So there are some algorithms in the background that AppSheet employs to help keep the most recent data set in a column, but occasionally you will get an issue where there is cross editing. So in order to work around that and make sure two people aren't editing at the same time, you can have fields that only one user type can edit. So that's a way to keep it separated. And you can also structure your user interactions to where they aren't editing the same thing at the same time by design. So let's say if there's a process that happens in the field where people are adding time cards in the field, maybe you can only, the administrator can only edit a time card once all the fields are filled out, the clock in and the clock out. That way it's unlikely to interrupt somebody's workflow. So that's kind of how you would work around that, Margot. In the future, AppSheet might build in more real-time data pushes. But again, if you have any users that are offline, real-time data push is not going to help. So hope that answers the question. Okay, awesome. I think it does. Another question from Thousand. Is there a way to prevent time and geo manipulation? For example, a user might be able to change the Android time and AppSheet will get that device's time. And they could also use fake location app to change the location. Is there a way to prevent that? The short answer is no. Not really. There are some things that you can do, such as enforce what computer or device is inputting the time. And what I mean by that is anything that happens inside the app experience. So like if I'm in the app editor, I'm going to edit this form here and I'm on what's called a client device. So something that a user is directly interacting with and has control over. Like I own this computer that's running this app right now. I could change the system time and the system location. However, there are parts of your AppSheet interactions that are not happening on a client device, that are happening on, quote, the server. That's the central computer that handles all the traffic. This is a computer in Google Cloud that is handling all of the AppSheet client traffic and funneling it back to your database. So you can get data from that computer. So anything in the workflow and reports parts of the app, any data change that is performed here. So like I'm going to add a new workflow here and I'm going to call it clock out, except I'm going to spell it funny. And I'm going to have it set on a time card. I'm not going to worry about the update event, but I'm going to show you there's a change data action. And I'm going to pick the action that I've already created called timeout and geo out, which sets the timeout column to the current time and sets the geo out to the current location. This action is going to be executed on the server, meaning not on the client's device and not on something they have control over. So the time is going to be the time according to that computer that Google owns, which is a pretty reliable time. There's nothing the user can do to spoof that time, but the location would also sort of maybe be the location of that central computer, which would be irrelevant to your app. So obviously you wouldn't want to track location, but you could use that to force time tracking. Now, again, with the offline online scenario, that time would be the time when the record lands on the server, which could be hours or days different than when the user submitted the record. So you'll want to take that into account. And if there's a really serious legal requirement that times and locations be super specific, one, the company should be providing devices to users and should lock down those permissions. But two, you shouldn't be using an AppSheet app to validate things that are that expensive or valuable to the company or represent that much business risk. This is more common internal operational things that AppSheet's built for. So if you need something extremely sophisticated like that, you should probably look at a different solution. But if your customer just really wants the information to be accurate, but doesn't have like real legal need for it to be that accurate, you would just kind of have to coach your customer and say, hey, this is the best we've got. If you want to do it better, you need to provide your own devices to your users. And you should probably think about, a more or a deeper native application where you have greater control over the time inputs, which is going to cost a lot more and take a lot longer. So there's the trade-off. You either use AppSheet and risk a little bit of error here or there, or you pay 100x in time and money to have exact times, exact locations always. So that was a very long answer, but yeah. I'm going to go ahead and delete this because I'm not actually going to save that workflow. Okay, if I was in, you set the app to sync on changes so that the time is updated to the server directly, but I'm still looking for the location solution. Yeah, there's not going to be a location solution. So again, the only solution would be for the company to provide devices and to restrict access to app downloads and other things. Okay. One thing that I find people are asking a lot is, how do I format times to be human readable? Sometimes you get dates and times that are, all seconds and numbers, and you want it to have words. And here we have in at 8 a.m., out at 11:20, if you're looking at the emulator on the top record. And then we have the duration spelled out. This used to be a really painful process in AppSheet. You used to have like 50-line expressions that were just insane, but AppSheet was kind to us and gave us some nice expressions here. So I'm going to show you the expression that we use to write those times out. So you probably noticed in my spreadsheet, there was no column that had that time written out. I'm actually using a virtual column in AppSheet. So I'm in the column editor for the time card table, and you see the edit pencil here on the left is gray for every column that is a real in the database. And the blue edit pencils represent virtual columns. These are columns that are calculated by AppSheet but don't exist in the data. So they're using some sort of logic to calculate it based on either static data in your table for that row or anything else in your app experience. So we have in-out display, which is the in and the out time, and then one called duration display. These are both text data types, and I have an app formula that is continuously calculating that for our users. So taking a look at this expression, I'm going to go ahead and bump up the zoom on the screen so everybody can see that, hopefully. Well, there we go. So this is a text concatenation expression. What that means is we're taking bits and pieces of text and joining it together with different dynamic portions of text and writing one cool sentence. And yes, files, and yes, if there's a way to change the date format, we will show that right here. So I want this to say in and the time, and I want to say it out and the time. But if I just pass the normal time value, it's going to have hours, minutes, seconds, AM, PM. If I don't want seconds, or if I don't want the 0 in front of the hours, say it's 8 a.m., it would say 08 colon 00 colon 00 AM by default for my localization. We have this formula called text where we pass in a value. This could be a time, this could be a date, this could be a number, this could be any non-text data type, and it will get formatted according to a certain pattern. There's a list of all the patterns that AppSheet supports in the help documentation. So if you search the text formula in help.appsheet.com, you can see what different formatting patterns are available. But I've chosen to format this one with the hour with single digits when it's available, minutes with 2 digits, no seconds, and then AM or PM. And I've done that again for the out time. If I wanted to show it in a different format, for instance, a date format, I could use something like day, month, year. So this would be a 4-digit year, a always 2-digit date, and an always 2-digit month. I could do single digit date, single digit month, and 2-digit year if I wanted to. There's a lot of flexibility that you have here. So we did something very similar for the other column, but we have an extra expression here because we want to show something different based on if the timeout column is blank or not. So we have an if expression that says, okay, if this first thing is true, then do the second thing. Otherwise, do the third thing. So that's the logic there. So if timeout is blank, or is not blank, sorry, if they have filled out the timeout column, then build this sentence. So put this text and the result of this, and this text and the result of that, and then the other text, put those together. And I'm basically just taking the timeout minus time in and returning the number of hours. And I'm taking the timeout and time in and returning the number of minutes. So this is part of the time, a variety of time expressions that are available. And then if the timeout is not filled out yet, we're just going to say pending time card. So we can see that here. If I just start another one, it says pending time card. And then the finalized one underneath it says duration 3 hours, 20 minutes. And we had another question. Is there anything that can be done to turn a virtual column into a real column? As an example, one day you want to use Data Studio for more visuals. So that's a great question. The short answer is maybe. So AppSheet can't make it a physical column, but you could put the value in a physical column. So the same way that this formula is always calculating this value, you could put this formula in a static column, and every time the row is edited, it's going to recalculate that and save it back to the static column. Or you could have a, we'll call it a backend expression. So if you're running on a Google Sheet, you could have a formula in that cell that is always calculating some value and filling it into that column. If you want to put data in Data Studio because you want more rich dashboards, you want to publicize that information or distribute it in a way that's not easy with AppSheet, where you just want a really rich, interactive data visualization experience, which a lot of people do need for their use cases. And it's common to put AppSheet data behind Google Data Studio dashboards. You would have to basically run the same type of function that the virtual column is doing in a calculated column in Data Studio. So Data Studio has the ability for you to create calculated columns. You would do the same thing there. Does that answer your question, Margot? I think it does. Awesome. All right, guys, we got about 15 minutes left on the calendar time. Any other parts of the app that you would like to see or questions that you have? There is one part that I haven't shown you that if nobody has any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and show that part. Okay, fantastic. It looks like I'm going to show the one hidden piece to the app so far. I'm going to clock this time card out, and it's 3 minutes, and I'm going to update my timesheet here. Okie dokie. I'm going to go ahead and force those syncs through. They were just kind of syncing in the background. I'm going to push them all the way through. So they hit my data table. And I mentioned that, I may have mentioned that this application has a report that fires off on Friday at the end of the day for payroll. So inside of AppSheet, you have workflows and reports. These are things like generate an email, generate a document like a PDF from your data, send a webhook to a third-party service, send a text message, things like that, or a change data action, which we looked at a little bit. The difference between a workflow and a report is that a workflow is triggered by some event in the app. It means the user is going to change data somewhere or press a button, and it's going to fire that workflow. A report is the same type of thing, but is run on a schedule instead of on a user interaction. So I have this thing called weekly work report that runs, shouldn't be running Monday. It should just be running Friday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on the employee table, and it runs a report for the entire table. And that report is going to be an email. And I've got a little expression here that is basically saying, send it to all of the employees who are administrators. And got a couple of subject pieces, but what's more important is I have an attachment template. So I am attaching a PDF and it is being generated according to this Google Doc, which we will take a look at. This is one of the coolest features of AppSheet, document generation. This is something that most other platforms, low code, no code, or even SaaS platforms don't provide out of the box. So, and this is a huge business requirement. Margo was talking earlier about Microsoft Access. One of the huge benefits of Microsoft Access to businesses was you can generate printed or digitized reports of data that you're collecting in your business. And so AppSheet really has a wide variety of things that you can do for document generation and a very robust markup language to make them very dynamic and data rich. So I'm going to zoom this in a little bit. And we're not going to worry about the Grammarly extension that I need all the time. We see that there are parts of this template that are covered in little double carets. This is telling AppSheet, hey, I am inserting an expression here. So fill in dynamic data wherever you see the double carets. And for those unfamiliar, putting square brackets and the name of something means this is a column of data in this row that you're running over or iterating through. So print its information here. So this prints the value of email. This prints the first name, last name, role, et cetera, et cetera. This expression here, which is kind of a wild little expression, it's saying start, and then it gives you there's an expression here that returns a list of things. This is super cool. It allows you to tell AppSheet, hey, I'm going to give a list of things and I want you to repeat this block of stuff. So between start, and I'm going to scroll down all the way over here, and end, between these two tags, repeat this template for every row of data in this list. So I'm passing in a list of employees here. So I'm selecting employees and the key column, which happens to be email here, from the employees table. So essentially return all employees and run this template for every employee. It's going to print their name, all their sort of information there. And then it will start another start expression, which is hard to read in this little cell. So I've kind of broken it out here for easier reading. It's saying, take this employee's related timesheets and return the key. Whenever you give AppSheet a list of keys, it treats it as like a whole table. And you can do cool things like what we're seeing here. And then there's a condition. So select all related timesheets where the week number is equivalent to the week number of today and the year is equivalent to the year of today. So basically this week's timesheets. And for that list, so we've got a start here and we have an end here. So between these tags, print the week number, the value for Sunday, which is total hours, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, print the column for total hours, any overtime, and the total amount, and then end. So it's going to basically repeat this row because this is inside of a little table in the Google Doc. It's going to repeat this for as many timesheets as there are. And we're doing the same thing for time cards, but I've just intentionally ordered them by their timestamp. So they come out in order, and it's going to print every time card for this employee within this period. And I'm going to show you the result of that here. Because I'm not going to wait till Friday, I'm just going to press this run button. And AppSheet says it's processing. And on this other screen, I am going to go get that email. It takes about, I don't know, 30 seconds to a minute. If you have a really complicated template that has a lot of data in it, it can take longer to generate, but I have gone ahead and opened it here. Hang on, guys. It is popping up shortly. Okay. Whoops. Sorry, guys. Give me just a second. I'm going to have to do some stuff here. Okay. All right. So this is the report that got printed off. First, we have Cameron's information. He was the first employee in the list. He didn't have any timesheets and no time cards. But then it goes to the second employee, which is myself. And I have a timesheet for the 35th week. Here's all the information, and here's all of my time cards. Nice printed report. Ship that off to HR, get it in the payroll, and I'm getting a check. Simple as that. All righty. Guys, we got a couple minutes left. We could do probably one or two final questions. Otherwise, I think we're going to call it. Awesome. Glad you guys have enjoyed it. Clark, I'm going to hand it back to you to finish this thing up.
Absolutely. And just so everybody is aware, we do have one final question, Steph.
Is there a way to make that as an attachment to the row in the app? There is a way. If you see attachment archive here, you can choose to attach and archive, or archive and not attach. And then you would specify a Google Drive folder path or whatever storage solution you're using. And you would probably want to disable the timestamp. And you would have to have a virtual column in your data table that basically calculated the same path where this thing is supposed to go. And so it's sort of like if it gets attached and it makes it into Drive, your file path that you generate in your virtual column should point to that right location and pull in the file. Having done that a handful of times, it's tricky. So it's not impossible, but it is definitely tricky. You will hit your head against the wall a handful of times, but eventually you can get it figured out. So yes, there is a way. Yep, no problem, man. All right, handing it back to Clark.
Alrighty. Okay, guys. So, last thing. Again, we are Crew Technologies. Right here, you have the URL for this webinar. We'll be back every Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. For anybody who wants to learn something new or just wants to, I know in quarantine, just wants to see a nice face, we have plenty of those on the screen currently. But if you would like to, we do have lots of different options available for you. If you'd like some training for yourself, or if you'd like some one-on-one coaching, on AppSheetTraining.com, we have self-paced training, we have enterprise training. These are the things that I actually used whenever I was just learning how to use AppSheet. I can personally say that they work. They work. I mean, look at me now. I'm hosting webinars, trying to talk and show other people how beneficial AppSheet is for their small businesses. And if you really enjoyed our Q&A section, we do have one-on-one coaching. We do have that available to you. I posted my email right here. If you have any other questions or concerns or feedback about the webinar, please feel free to shoot me an email at any time, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Or if you are tired of trying to build your app and it's so frustrating because of all the super complicated things that Stefan's trying to teach us, we will, be able to help you. We will be able to make those solutions available for you. So yeah, like I said, appsheettraining.com, Crew Technologies. Feel free to check us out. Stefan, you got anything else?
I think that's it, man. You're doing great.
Alrighty.
Glad to have everyone.
Yeah, we're glad to have everybody here. I'm gonna stop the recording.